Welcome back. This week on Weatherwise, meteorologist Jackson Chastains explains how thunderstorms are formed. Take a look.
Meteorologist Jackson Chastain here with the latest edition of Weatherwise. Today we're talking thunderstorms. We're in February right now. We're a month away from the beginning of meteorological spring, and what that means is severe storms become much more likely, especially during that time of year. So I thought I'd just go over with you guys kind of the life cycle of the basic thunderstorm, what you can expect and what you can kind of know about how thunderstorms form and how they live their lives. Now, before I go over thunderstorms, there's a very important concept that we kind of need to go over, and that's the concept of convection, which is basically what drives how these thunderstorms form. Now, imagine you have a hot air balloon. The best way to think of convection is if you have a hot air balloon, and you're sitting in that hot air balloon and you want to go up. Well, you can't go up if you have no air in the balloon, but that air also has to be warm. When you have warm air that's less dense than its surroundings, that's warmer than its surroundings, it tends to rise and the balloon goes up. Now, the same principle is basically in effect when you have convection just with an air parcel. So if you have an air parcel that's heating the ground, you have heating of the ground, it forms these air parcels. Those rise up because they're less dense than their environment, they're lighter than their environment. They reach a level where they cool as they rise. They reach a level where they become, where the parcel will condense and you'll get cloud droplets, and then you get a cloud. And that's the basic process you get when you see puffy cumulus popcorn clouds in the skies. That's kind of what you're seeing, is these air parcels rising up, condensing and forming into clouds. Now, typically, a lot of these clouds don't make it very far into the atmosphere, but occasionally, if the parcel's warm enough, if it has enough momentum, it can rise very high in the sky and you'll end up with a thunderstorm. Now, there's three stages to a thunderstorm, those being the cumulus, mature, and dissipation stage. I'm going to go over each of those three stages for you and kind of give you an idea of what we're looking at. Now, that first stage that I mentioned, that cumulus stage, that's when the parcel begins to rise. That's when it's initially building itself. It hasn't turned into a thunderstorm yet, but it's building up. It's getting that warm air, and it forms something called an updraft, which is basically warm air that is feeding into the storm and allows itself to build upon itself. It's feeding warm air into the storm. It's allowing more cloud to build. Eventually, that cloud builds itself up high enough that you get a cumulonimbus cloud, aka a thunderstorm, and that's where you get all the bells and whistles. You get all the lightning, the hail, the tornadoes, the rain, the very strong winds. All those come from the mature stage of that thunderstorm very typically. And at that point, the clouds do continue to grow. They grow as high as they can, typically to the tropopause, because that's when you get a temperature shift and things can't go any higher. But you also get the formation of something called a downdraft. Now, when you get ice and you get rain, it condenses and it forms, it cools the air around it. So when you're getting all these ice and rain particles in the cloud, they cool the air around it, and as a result, that less dense air wants to sink down into the ground, and you get sinking air that forms something called a downdraft. And that's why when you see a thunderstorm approaching, you get some strong winds moving through the region. That's that downdraft that you're feeling hitting the ground. Now, eventually, that downdraft is actually going to cut off the updraft, and when that happens, then the thunderstorm is truly dying. It doesn't have anything feeding it anymore. It has no more fuel, and that's kind of when you reach that dissipation stage. It's raining itself out. There's no really hazards as much here. You don't see nearly as much lightning, certainly not really any tornadoes or hail for that matter, but some rain still present. But at this point, the storm is raining itself out and it starts to dissipate because that downdraft has cut things off. Now, that's all I have for today for Weatherwise. If you have questions, always happy to take those on our social media. And if you want to just message me on my personal handles, you're more than welcome to do so. But thanks again for watching and have a nice night.
Weatherwise is brought to you by Fort County Electric Power Association.